Listen, you've heard the names, El Chapo, Pablo Escobar. Everyone says Joaquin El Chapo Guzman is the new Escobar. Even the DEA says he's the most powerful drug runner in history. But get this, comparing them is a massive mistake. One of them was an outlaw king who tried to own an entire country. The other was a CEO of a federation who spent his life hiding in a laundry basket or a hole in the ground. If you think they are basically the same person in different decades, you are doing it completely wrong. The reality of these two men is way more twisted than the Netflix shows tell you. Wait until you hear how one of them literally offered to pay off his country's $13 billion national debt just to stay out of jail. And stay tuned, because I'm going to show you why the world's most powerful title is actually a huge marketing lie. Today we're looking at the two biggest names in the history of the drug trade. Most people look at the mustaches and the billions and think it's a fair fight, but I've looked at the actual data from the sources. The truth is, El Chapo and Escobar played two completely different games in two completely different worlds. One was a king of coke who handled 80% of the world's supply. The other was a logistics expert who turned Mexico into a delivery hub for every drug on the planet. In this video, I'm going to break down the 5 reasons why comparing them is not just wrong. It's a total misunderstanding of how the criminal world actually works. By the end of this, you'll see why Escobar was a literal god of war, while Chapo was more like a very dangerous delivery driver. I'm going to walk through the money, the violence, and the way they actually handled being caught. I guarantee this will change how you think about the war on drugs forever. Reason 1. The money gap. It's not even close. Let's start with the money. Most people see El Chapo on the Forbes list and think he's the richest criminal ever. He was a billionaire, sure, but Pablo Escobar was on a whole different level of wealth. In 1987, Escobar was the 7th richest man on the entire planet. He had a personal wealth of close to $25 billion to $30 billion. Think about that. Escobar was making $420 million every single week. He was making money so fast that he had to write off 10% of it every year because rats were literally eating the cash in storage. He spent $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to hold his stacks together. Chapo's net worth was estimated at around $1 billion. That's a lot of money, but it's 3% of what Escobar had. Escobar bought a jet just to fly his money around. Chapo lived a relatively humble life in the mountains when he wasn't on the run. Therefore, comparing their financial power is like comparing a local tech startup to Apple. One had enough cash to offer to pay off Colombia's $10 billion to $13 billion national debt. The other was a billionaire who the US government can't even find any money from today. But here's the thing. The money wasn't just for luxury, it was for the next reason these two are nothing alike. Reason 2, how they handled the state. Look, if you want to know who was more powerful, you have to look at how they treated the government. Escobar's motto was plata o plomo, silver or lead. It was simple, you take the money or you take a bullet. And he didn't just kill low-level cops, he killed 600 police officers. He took out leading politicians, lawyers, and even blew up a commercial airplane carrying 107 people just to try and kill one guy. He was so powerful, he got himself elected to the Chamber of Representatives in Colombia. He was an official representative of the government. He even funded a guerrilla group to attack the Supreme Court and kill half of the justices. Chapo didn't want to be in the government. He wanted to stay hidden in the mountains. He used a federation model, acting as a coalition of traffickers to maintain business. Chapo's power came from bribery and clever logistics, not from trying to overthrow the state. He had local military commanders and politicians on his payroll, but he wasn't trying to be the president. When Escobar was caught, he negotiated a deal to stay in a private 5-star prison he built himself called La Catedral. It had a soccer field, a bar, a jacuzzi, and a giant dollhouse. Chapo's prison experience? He just bought off the guards so he could smuggle in contraband and prostitutes. He didn't have a luxury hotel, he had a system of corruption. Therefore, Escobar was a warlord, but Chapo was a businessman with a lot of guns. Reason 3, the market and the product. This is where it gets really interesting. Pablo Escobar was the king of coke. In the 1980s, cocaine was like the Louis Vuitton of drugs. You could buy leaves for pennies and sell them for outrageous prices in the US. Escobar controlled the production, the processing, and the shipping. At his peak, he was smuggling 15 tons of cocaine into the US every single day. He owned 80% of the market. Now look at El Chapo. By the time Chapo rose to power, the drug world had evolved. He wasn't just dealing in cocaine. He was moving marijuana, heroin, methamphetamine, and ecstasy. Chapo was the godfather of the drug world because he was the gateway. Because Mexico is the path into the US, Chapo's job was mostly logistics. His cartel focused on controlling the entry plazas into the US, rather than just producing one substance. He pioneered the use of distribution cells and long-range tunnels. He even packed cocaine into chili pepper cans branded as La Comadre. But here is the complication. Because Chapo was a middleman for so many things, his power was more fragile. Escobar was the industry itself. The Mexican cartels were often just being paid to move the Colombian product. It's the difference between owning the factory and owning the delivery truck. Reason 4, the Robin Hood factor. Both of these guys worked hard to win the support of the poor. Escobar built hospitals, schools, and churches. He built entire housing projects and soccer fields for people who had nothing. When he died, 25,000 Colombians attended his funeral to mourn their Robin Hood. Chapo had a similar thing going in the Golden Triangle. He rewarded local farmers who grew opium and marijuana with handouts and favors. He was a hero to the locals in Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua. In 2005, the mayor of a town wouldn't even say Chapo's name aloud to a reporter out of respect or fear. But there's a massive difference in how they use this support. Escobar used it to try and win legitimate political power. Chapo used it to hide. Chapo's security detail was about 300 men, and he moved between 10 to 15 safe houses. Escobar lived openly in Medellin, and even took his family to Disneyland in the US at the height of his power. Chapo was a ghost, Escobar was a celebrity. Therefore, while both were seen as champions of the poor, Escobar's ego was far bigger than Chapo's. Escobar wanted the world to know who he was. Chapo wanted to be a myth that no one could find. Reason 5, the endgame, shootout versus Supermax. How these two men met their end tells you everything you need to know about why they shouldn't be compared. Pablo Escobar died in a hail of gunfire on a crumbling rooftop in Medellin in 1993. He went out in a final violent confrontation with the state. He was 44 years old. Chapo was luckier for a long time. He was captured and escaped not once, but twice. The first time, he bribed his way out in a laundry basket in 2001. The second time, in 2015, he escaped through a 1.5-kilometer tunnel dug directly into his prison shower. It had artificial light, air ducts, and even a motorcycle inside. He was finally recaptured in 2016 after a shootout where he tried to bribe the officers and then threatened them when they said no. Today, Chapo is alive, but he's in ADX Florence, the most secure Supermax prison in the US. He's in a windowless cell for 23 hours a day. Escobar's reign was a short, violent fire that burned out quickly. Chapo's reign was a slow, calculated business that lasted decades. They were two different eras of crime. Escobar created the game. Chapo just learned how to survive in it longer. The B-plot, the DEA's marketing trick. Now, I promise to tell you about the most powerful lie. Why do US officials call El Chapo the godfather of the drug world and say he's bigger than Escobar? Well, it's because they need a new public enemy number one to justify the billions they spend on the war on drugs. Chapo was the first person since Al Capone to be named public enemy number one in Chicago, even though he'd never even been to Chicago. When you make one guy the biggest ever, it makes it a huge win when you finally catch him. But did the drugs stop after Chapo was arrested? No, he was replaced in a heartbeat. The Sinaloa cartel is still just as big as it ever was. Escobar's death actually changed things for a while because he was so central to the entire cocaine market. Chapo was just a very successful piece of a much larger machine. So there you have it. Comparing El Chapo to Pablo Escobar is like comparing a general to a CEO. One fought the world, the other tried to manage it. Escobar had the money, the political status, and the sheer terror. Chapo had the tunnels, the bribes, and the longevity. They both grew up poor and became the most wanted men on earth. But their stories are totally different.